Vespera Junction is a so-called neutral station carved into a hollow asteroid. Elias Rourke wakes up strapped to a clinic bed, labeled fragile, and given a deadline. 3 hours. No gear. No help. Just rules that sound humane while quietly deciding who gets to live. Then Dr. Lyra Quell makes one illegal choice to keep him breathing, and the station immediately notices. The audit is coming, security is closing in, and someone high above the station is already asking one question. Why is this human worth so much? Vespera Junction was built into a hollow asteroid, and it called itself neutral while answering to the Axiom Secretariat and its audits. Elias Rourke had 3 hours before an audit sweep turned his bed into a holding cell. His file on the wall tagged him Terran Strategic Directorate, and on a neutral station that tag did not earn help. It earned liability. He lay in Gray Bay Clinic with restraint bands on wrists and ankles, because the station labeled humans as fragile cargo and locked them down by default. A display hovered at eye level, and it showed a line that read, "Accord of Fragility." The rules followed in clean text that sounded humane while killing people slowly. Basic care only was allowed, and anything invasive required a compliance witness and a signature, which meant no signature meant no treatment. Elias tried to inhale and tasted antiseptic as fluid fought him. His ribs burned, and the rise of his chest felt like borrowed time. A soft chime sounded, and the wall timer confirmed the audit sweep in 3 hours. Elias forced his voice out through the ache. "Where's my gear?" he asked. A curtain rustled, and Marshal Carden Vale stepped in with armor clean and posture official. The patch on his chest read Axiom Secretariat. "You are awake," Vale said. "I need a real fix," Elias replied. Vale glanced at the display as if it were the only face that mattered. "Under the accord, you are a liability." "I'm a person," Elias said. "On this station, you are what the paperwork allows," Vale said. "After the sweep, you go to containment unless someone signs for you." Contained sounded clean, and Elias knew it ended ugly. He shifted his wrist, the restraint tightened, and a fresh tag pressed into his skin like a tracking seal. Vale did not deny it. Standard precaution. Elias swallowed pain and kept his tone flat. "My team," he asked. "Transfer ring incident," Vale said. "Under review." "And what I was carrying?" Elias asked. Vale's mouth barely moved. "The file will answer what it can." Elias met his visor line and held it. "So the file says what you want," he said. Vale leaned in, voice low enough to feel like a threat you could not record. "Make noise, and I lock this bay and walk away, and you will still be alive when the audit arrives, just not for long." He straightened as if he had delivered policy instead of a warning. "Stay quiet. Stay inside the rules." When the curtain fell, Elias stared at the timer until the numbers stopped feeling abstract. He chose his goal the way a soldier chose a route. Stay alive long enough to choose his own ending. Dr. Lyra Quell stood at his bedside with her hands still, because Gray Bay had cameras and panic looked like guilt. Her tablet showed Elias's lung scan darkening by the minute, and she watched the slope like it was a countdown. She tapped for an intervention order, and the console blocked it with a lockout line tied to human protocol. Lyra kept her voice low, because walls had ears on Vespera. "I can stabilize you," she said. "I cannot fix you, not legally. If you follow the rules, I die," Elias said. Lyra did not argue, because the station did not reward arguments. On Vespera, medicine worked like an airport gate, and you could stand there with a ticket and still be locked out. A cart rolled in behind the curtain, paused, then rolled away as if it had never existed. When Lyra checked the hall, it was empty, but an amber case sat on the shelf sealed with a foreign crest. Not standard stock and not an accident. Lyra lifted it and cracked the seal just enough to read the label, and the foam cutout framed 3 small vials. The label said Kestrelatus Serum. It was combat medicine that could make a dying soldier stand, and it also left a signature scanners loved, a bright flag that said take this one. For humans it carried a second warning, because it could push the body too hard and collapse it faster. Lyra kept her voice tight and honest. "This is not allowed here," she said. "Neither is letting someone die because of a checklist," Elias replied. Lyra looked at the restraints and the failing rise of his chest. If I do this, they come for you, and they come for me. They erase mistakes, Lyra added. Elias held her eyes with no flirting and no pleading, only a promise shaped like a tool. You keep me alive, I get you out of this station. Lyra exhaled once, slow and controlled. You do not even know if you can walk. I know I will try, Elias said. That is the only part one control. Lyra shifted her body to block the shelf from the camera angle. Her voice dropped to a working whisper. Do not fight the restraints, she said. Elias nodded once, and Lyra broke the seal. She moved fast without becoming frantic, and she snapped a compact device onto the port under Elias's collarbone. The casing read Halo Governor, and it was a regulator that could cool blood and reduce clot risk while buying time instead of healing. A thin chill spread under Elias's veins as Lyra pulled one vial from the foam. She placed the injector at the base of his neck and watched his eyes. Do it, Elias said. She pressed the trigger, and heat flooded his bloodstream as his back arched. The bands tightened to keep his ribs from tearing. Alarm tones spiked, then steadied under Lyra's hands as she pushed cooling and anti-clot support through the console. The Halo Governor pulsed cold, sharp enough to sting his teeth. Then the pain stopped spreading and gathered like a storm, choosing where to strike first. Elias pulled a deeper breath. It still hurt, but it held. His senses snapped wider, and he heard footsteps 2 bays away and the faint whine of a cartwheel. He also heard the click of Lyra's glove on the console rail, steady and precise. Lyra stared at the scrolling chemistry. That should not stabilize. Elias turned his head a fraction. How long do we have? He asked. A wall alert answered for her, blooming in clean text that did not care about hope. The console displayed a line that read, Unauthorized bioactive signature detected. Lyra went still. The ring will flag this, and security will come. Then we hide it, Elias said. I can mask base sensors for a short window, Lyra replied. Not long. Short is enough, Elias said. She rerouted the bay monitors into an older diagnostic loop and forced the vitals into legal margins, plausible and not true. A chime sounded in the corridor, and the curtain snapped back hard enough to feel like an accusation. Vale stepped in with a handheld scanner and 2 officers. Report, Vale said. Lyra placed herself between the scanner and the bed. Stabilization in progress. Human protocols observed. Vale's gaze flicked to the shelf, and the amber case sat resealed as if it belonged there. He lifted the scanner toward Elias's neck. The beam washed over his collarbone, and the device paused, chirped, then threw a signal mismatch error. Vale's eyes narrowed. Step aside. Lyra held her ground. You will contaminate a sterile field. Vale's voice cooled. That is not your call. Lyra kept it simple. Breach protocol during an audit window, and you own the incident. Vale hesitated, then stepped back half a pace. Seal this bay. No transport. No visitors. The door lock chimed, and the officers complied. Vale stopped at the curtain and let the threat return a paperwork language. If this becomes an Axiom matter, you will not control the outcome, he said. Lyra answered quietly. I already do not. Vale left, and the curtain fell like a lid. Elias flexed his fingers, and the restraint band slid a fraction as if it no longer trusted its own strength. They are coming back with better scanners, Elias said. Soon, Lyra replied. Elias forced his heart to stay calm, so his blood would not spike. Then we do not wait, he said. Lyra met his eyes and did not pretend the station was fair. On this station, medicine is permission. Elias answered in the same plain tone. Then we take permission away from them. Boots moved again down the hall, farther away, like the station was waking up to hunt. Lyra glanced at the door lock light, then at the camera in the corner. Once Holt arrives, this bay becomes a box, she said. Elias tested the band again, and it gave a little, confused by his new strength. The Halo Governor pulsed cold in warning, and he listened. I can get you off the bed, Lyra said. But you have to move like a tired worker, not a soldier. Elias nodded once. Tell me what to do? He asked. Lyra leaned close, voice barely above breath. First we get you out of this room. Then we get you out of this station. 3 hours until the audit sweep. and Elias Rourke had one job now. Stay alive and get out of Gray Bay before the Axiom Secretariat turned him into a sealed file. The door lock clicked again, not opening, just reminding them it could. Dr. Lyra Quell stood between Elias and the hall with shoulders set like a nurse guarding an emergency bay. You said you could buy time, Elias whispered. I can try, Lyra said, but we do not get a second chance if they get a clean read. Boots stopped outside the curtain, and a soft hum followed, the sound of a scanner rig floating on a cart. Lyra lifted her chin and pulled the curtain aside. Inspector Seraphine Holt walked in with two officers, her coat neat and her gloves spotless. Her eyes went straight to the display before they went to Elias. Elias Rourke, Holt said, Terran Strategic Directorate, subject to the Accord of Fragility. Elias kept his breathing slow, and the Halo Governor pulse cold under his collarbone before easing. Heat waited in his core like a match in a pocket. We are relocating you, Holt said. To where? Elias asked. Containment Bay, Holt replied. Risk assessment. Lyra stepped into the rig's path. He cannot be moved safely. The station cannot carry an undocumented anomaly through an audit window, Holt said. There is contamination in this bay, Lyra replied. Holt blinked once. Explain. A plasma spill on Dock 14 bled vapor into the intake, Lyra said. If you skin close, you log false positives, and then you quarantine a corridor and write a report nobody wants. The officers shifted, not scared, just irritated. On Vespera, irritation could stop a man faster than fear. Holt watched Lyra for a long beat, doing wrist math. What do you want? She asked. A sterile hold, Lyra said. No additional scanning until I finish a stabilizing cycle, because if you move him now, he crashes on your card. Holt looked at Elias. True, Elias could have lied, but he did not. If you haul me right now, I stop breathing. Holt nodded as if checking a box. Then we do this the slow way. She lifted a thin patch from her pocket, and Lyra did not hide her dislike. Holt kept her expression polite and empty. What is that? Lyra asked. A monitor, Holt said. Non-invasive. Within the accord. She pressed it onto Elias's restraint band. It clicked softly, and it warmed against his skin. Elias felt it like a leash going on. This does not mean you are guilty, Holt said. It means you are interesting. Lyra held her posture, but Elias saw the smallest tremor in her hand. It was not fear, it was anger. I need a written delay order, Lyra said. Holt's mouth curved, almost polite. You want my name on it? If I'm going to be blamed, I want the chain clean, Lyra replied. Holt signed on Lyra's tablet, quick and confident, and the signature felt like a door locking from the inside. Elias spoke low, only for Lyra. You chose, he said. I did, Lyra replied. I will pay the cost with you, Elias said. Holt stepped back. You have minutes, doctor. Not hours. Lyra kept her voice steady. How many? She asked. Until the next sweep of this corridor, Holt said. Less than an hour. She turned to leave, then paused as if choosing how much truth to spend. There's another layer above me, and Director Cashenver is watching anomalies this week. If he tags this, I cannot help you. I'm not asking for help, Lyra said. I'm asking for time. Holt left without looking back, and the rig hummed away. Gray Bay felt smaller when the curtain fell. Lyra leaned close. She gave us a window, and she also put a hook in you. Elias glanced at the monitor patch. Then we moved before the hook pulls. Lyra nodded once. Now, they had a reason and a goal, and that was enough. Axiom wanted Elias contained for the audit, and Lyra needed him out of Gray Bay before the monitor patch reported a clean location. Lyra pulled a flat device from under the cart and palmed it like contraband. This is a veil burn jammer, and it makes cameras and cheap scanners stutter for a few seconds. We use it now because the battery runs hot, and a hot jammer is a loud jammer, she added. Elias gave a tight nod, and his Halo governor stayed, quiet only if he stayed disciplined. Lyra pressed a dull fabric patch under his collar. This blurs your trace. On casual readers, she said, it will not fool a real rig. Good enough, Elias replied. She tapped the restraint band once, and a hidden latch clicked, loosening it just enough. Elias kept his voice low and controlled. You could have done that earlier? He asked. Earlier, you were drowning, Lyra said. Earlier, your ribs could have split. Elias slid his hand free, slow, and his fingers obeyed in a way they had not before. Lyra cracked the bay door and listened. Boots passed, then faded. The camera light blinked steady. She set the jammer to the frame and tapped it once, and a soft pulse went out. The corridor camera flickered, not dead, just confused. Walk like you belong here, Lyra said. They stepped into the hall and moved with the flow of workers. Vespera Junction smelled like hot metal and recycled air, and the station noise covered small sins. They kept to the outer lane where freight handlers moved in tired lines, and nobody looked up. A weld team threw sparks like summer fireworks, and the air tasted of hot insulation. Elias kept his eyes on reflections and glass panels that could show a tail without turning his head. Each time his pulse jumped, the Halo Governor answered with a cold bite under his skin, reminding him that speed had a price. Lyra touched his sleeve once. If you feel the cold hit twice in a row, you stop. I stop, Elias replied. You pull me if I do not. They reached a service junction where a gate scanner stood like an airport arch, and a board guard leaned on the wall with eyes half present. Lyra lifted her medic badge and stepped through, and the guard waved them on. An overhead board blinked with a shipping update that looked harmless. Lyra froze for one step, then kept walking, and Elias read the change in her face. What was that? Elias asked. A black market ping, Lyra said. They hide it in freight boards. What did it say? Elias asked. Lyra swallowed once. Aegis Trace confirmed. Elias did not know the word, but he knew her tone. Lyra kept it simple, and she kept it clean for the year. They call it Aegis, and it sounds like Aegis, she said. It is what they call your new blood pattern. It matters because it proves you are valuable. Lyra continued. It is happening now because your trace just hit a reader and the market moves faster than the law. A second line flashed and vanished, a code and a price. Lyra did not soften it. Someone is selling your location, she said. Who? Elias asked. Lyra answered with a place. Archive market. Under the freight decks. What is that? Elias asked. A flea market under the docks where off-the-books things get sold, Lyra said. It matters because you can buy a clean route there, or you can get trapped there. We go now because Holt will start closing gates when she confirms you are missing, she added. Elias looked ahead and picked the worker flow like a current. Then we go. Lyra's voice dropped. Not only the law is hunting you, the market is hunting you too. Then we stay ahead of both, Elias said. Archive Market sat behind a service corridor that smelled like coolant and stale coffee. The entrance scanner arch looked like a mouth, and the guard looked bored and bought. Lyra showed her badge and said, Consult. The guard waved them through. Inside, the market was a narrow hall of shutters and light panels, and stalls sold tools, seals, old navigation chips, and cases that never appeared on official manifests. A drone drifted overhead, pretending it was looking for contraband. Elias kept his body between Lyra and the open floor, moving like someone trying not to get boxed in. A figure stepped out near a stall of cracked display screens, plain clothes, clean boots, and eyes too quick. Moth Velan. Moth looked at Lyra first, then at Elias's collar like he could see the Halo Governor through fabric. His voice came warm, practiced, and false. Dr. Quell, Moth said, you are far from your bay. I'm on my way to a consult, Lyra said, not stopping. Moth matched their pace. And you brought a human, and humans are in demand tonight. We are passing through, Elias said. Passing through costs less when the goods get verified, Moth replied. Lyra's hand hovered near her hip where the jammer sat. Elias saw the shift in the crowd before it hit. The way bodies opened lanes without looking like they were doing it. Two men peeled off from a vendor line. A small drone rose from a tray with its lens already open. Lyra spoke fast and soft. Do not let the drone read your neck. Elias moved, slapped the drone sideways, and twisted its lens into a light panel. The lens flared white, and the drone chirped and wobbled. One man lunged for Elias's collar, and Elias caught the wrist and turned it down. The shoulder popped, and the man dropped with a strangled sound. The second man brought up a dart injector angled for Elias's neck. Elias drove his elbow into the hand, and the injector clattered under a stall. Lyra triggered the jammer, and a tight pulse rolled through the hall. Light panels flickered, and the overhead drone stuttered midair like it forgot which way was up. Bodies bumped and cursed, a vendor yelled, and the hall shifted from noise to panic. Moth's smile vanished, then returned colder. "You brought illegal equipment into my hall," Moth said. "You brought a trap," Elias replied. Moth spread his hands. "No, I brought a price." More movement rippled at the far end, and Elias heard it before he saw it. The wrong cadence of steps. Rafe Kincaid stepped into view, taller than Moth, harder, and with no interest in charm. He lifted a sampler tool and fixed his eyes on Elias's collar. "Hold him!" Heat surged behind Elias's eyes, and the Halo governor answered with a cold pulse that stung his teeth. His ribs protested, and he used the pain like a leash. "Do not sprint, do not spike, get out." Lyra stepped close, voice controlled. "This way." Elias yanked open a maintenance shutter behind stacked seal crates, and cold air spilled from crawl space. Lyra climbed first, then reached back, and Elias took her hand and hauled himself up while keeping his torso tight so his ribs did not flare. Behind them, Moth called out almost friendly. "You are priced now. You do not get unpriced." Lyra dropped the shutter, and metal slammed down, muffling the market. In the crawl space, it was dark and cramped, and Elias's heart hammered anyway. The Halo governor pulsed again, trying to keep him from boiling himself alive. Lyra crawled ahead fast, but careful. "We are not safe," she whispered. "We are moving," Elias said. "That is enough." Above them, a public speaker chimed, and a comm station voice followed that was too calm to be good news. A nearby maintenance board displayed notice that said gate checkpoints would close due to an active compliance event. A second message followed, quieter, routed through the same boards. It read containment escort staged. Subject of interest missing. Lyra did not need to explain who wrote that. Elias could hear Holt in the phrasing, clean and certain. "We need a way off this level," Lyra whispered. "A lift without a camera." Elias listened to the metal around them and the vibration of moving freight. "Then we follow the noise. Noise hides footprints." Lyra nodded once and kept crawling, the jammer warm in her palm. Elias did not need to see Holt to feel her hand on the station. Two hunters, two methods. One with law, one with hunger, and both pushing them toward the same narrow exit. They had slipped out of Archive Market, but they were not free. Elias Rourke and Dr. Lyra Quell needed one thing now. A quiet route off Vesper Junction before Axiom sealed every gate and Lazarus Cartel put a price tag on his neck. Harkon Tug 9 looked like a delivery van in space, the kind nobody remembered after it passed. The pilot kept his eyes forward and his mouth shut, because on a neutral station curiosity could get you fired. Lyra stayed close with her kit, and the Halo governor under Elias's collarbone pulsed cold in short cycles. It kept his heat down by force and luck. "That monitor patch is still on you," Lyra said. "I know," Elias replied. "If it pings, Holt knows where we are." "Then we do not give it a clean ping," Lyra said. "We move dirty and quiet." The tug eased into the shatter belt, a drifting junkyard of panels and dead drones where sensors lied and ambushes hid in plain sight. If you saw a clean light, it was either a miracle or a trap, and the belt did not do miracles. A rendezvous beacon appeared on the NAV display, neat and bright in a place that should have been messy. Elias stared at it until his instincts settled into words. "Too clean," he said. "It is meant to look safe," Lyra replied. The pilot glanced back. "Service ping, like a tow call." "Do not answer," Elias said. "Slow down, and use the scrap as cover." The tug drifted toward a cluster of cargo containers hung together under old clamps, and one carried a relief mark that looked like charity. The weld seam was new in the wrong place. A weak life sign blinked near it, steady and close. The camera sharpened, and it showed a dock worker in a patched suit tethered to the container frame. His helmet was cracked and taped, and his chest rose fast in short pulls. He looked like he was trying not to panic because panic used oxygen. A voice cut into the open band, smooth as a contract. Terran asset and the medic. Hold position. We take a sample, then you leave. Lyra went still. Lazarus Cartel. Elias watched the shadows behind the containers. They are not alone. Someone is managing angles. Two small boarding skiffs slid out of drift shadow. A larger craft stayed back, holding distance like a supervisor, not talking, not rushing, just watching like it had all night. The voice returned, amused. Give us your neck, Elias. We'll let the worker go. Lyra leaned close. If you push too hard, you will overheat. You will not feel it until it is too late. I'm not pushing too hard, Elias said. I'm going smart. He looked at the pilot. Kill the lights, keep thrust low, and put the container stack between us and them. The tug drifted in close, and Elias clipped the tether to his harness. He checked the veil-burn jammer at his belt and felt how little margin it really held. Lyra caught his sleeve, and her finger stayed for a beat longer than necessary. You do not have to do this, she said. If I let him die, I become what they say I am, Elias replied. Lyra nodded once. I keep your numbers in view. If you go red, I pull you back. Elias opened the side hatch and pushed into the shatter belt, and cold silence swallowed him. Scrap drifted past like slow shrapnel. The first skiff drifted closer with its nose camera sweeping. Elias waited until the angle lined up, then tapped the jammer once. The camera flared white and stuttered. Elias fired his tether anchor into the skiff frame and reeled in, landing hard with ribs protesting. He pried open a service hatch with a heavy tool and cut a guidance bundle in one clean motion. The skiff began to rotate blind and useless, thrusters firing in short, confused bursts. A shout burst over the band. Track him. Do not let him reach the container. A net fired from the second skiff, and Elias rolled under it while feeling the edge brush his shoulder plate. Heat surged behind his eyes, and the Halo governor answered with a cold pulse that stung his teeth. Lyra's voice came through his audio, controlled but strained. Your core is rising. Slow down. Not yet, Elias said. Not while he is out there. He slid along the container stack in shadow and grabbed the clamp holding the worker's tether. The metal looked taped and crude, but the bolt pattern underneath was too clean. It is staged, Elias said. The worker's voice cracked. Please, do not leave me. I am here, Elias said. Hold on. Elias reached for the clamp lock, and the container door blew outward on compressed gas. The blast threw him sideways and fragments rang off his suit. The worker screamed as his tether snapped and he began to drift spinning. Elias fired his rescue line without thinking. The hook bit into the worker's suit ring, and the reel whined as it took load and slowed the spin. Hold still, Elias said. I have you. Two operatives burst out of the container, boots magneting to the metal, and one carried a sampler injector with a shielded vial. Both aimed for Elias's neck port, not to kill him, but to own him. Elias yanked the worker closer with one hand and used the wall to pivot. He drove the heavy tool into the injector hand, and the vial spun away into the dark. The second operative fired a dart that struck Elias's thigh and burned like a wire shoved into muscle. Elias tore it free and forced his leg to obey, while the Halo governor dumped cold as his core tried to surge. Lyra's voice sharpened. Elias, you are climbing. I know, Elias said. I'm almost done. He pushed deeper into the container frame and saw it, a black module strapped to the inner ribs sealed with a biometric strip. Orchard key. It was a routing token like a master key card for shipping lanes, and it mattered because it could open or close routes that fed whole stations. Elias ripped the strip and pulled the module free, and his suit display flashed that recording was active. The cartel had been filming the whole trap, and the bait was not only the worker. The bait was the footage, a clean clip they could sell as proof that Elias was real and valuable. A skiff surged close with thrusters flashing blue against scrap, and its net gun tracked Elias patient and hungry. Elias reeled toward the tug, dragging the worker behind him, and the extra mass slowed him until his heat spiked hard enough to make the edges of his vision pulse. Lyra's voice cut in. Cut the line now. Elias clenched his jaw, and the worker's oxygen alarm chirped thin and desperate. No, open the hatch. Bring him in. The hatch opened and Lyra leaned out with one hand locked on the frame. She grabbed the worker's suit ring and hauled him inside, refusing to let go. Elias hit the hatch a beat later, and Lyra pulled him in and sealed it with a hard slap. The pilot fired a lateral burn. Debris streaked across the camera like knives, and one skiff clipped a plate fragment and spun away. The other skiff kept coming. The larger craft stayed back, still watching, antenna turning like it was tasting every transmission. Lyra pulsed the jammer in short bursts, and the skiff wobbled as its cameras flared. Elias leaned over the pilot's shoulder. "Use the scrap as a shield," Elias said. "Thread the tight gaps." The tug slipped between spinning panels, and metal scraped close enough to make the cabin vibrate. A skiff tried to follow and sheared a stabilizer, tumbling end over end. The larger craft did not chase into the teeth. It waited at the edge, like it expected the lane ahead to do the rest. Lyra checked Elias's patch and went pale. "You are past safe." The Halo governor pulsed cold, paused, then pulsed again as if it was losing the argument. Lyra did not waste comfort. "I have to lower your ceiling," she said. "If I do not, your body turns on you." Elias met her eyes. "Do it. I would rather live smaller than die bright." Lyra plugged a probe into the governor port, and pain hit Elias like his muscles were being told to forget a new strength. He held still while she worked with fast, careful hands, and the heat eased into something he could live with. His pulse dropped from a roar to a hard drum. Lyra did not look relieved. She looked marked. They drifted behind dead plating, hiding in the shadow of the debris field. The dock worker lay on the deck, breathing through a portable feed with eyes blank with shock. Lyra pressed 2 fingers to Elias's neck, counting. Her touch stayed professional, but it lingered a fraction longer than it had to. "You saved him," she said. "You saved me first," Elias replied. Lyra looked at the orchard key in his palm, playing like a cheap drive, which was the point. "They recorded us. We are not just being chased," Lyra added. "We are being marketed." Elias nodded once. "Because this decides who eats and who waits." A chime sounded on the console, sharp and official, and a cold notice filled the screen. The console displayed a formal notice stating that Dr. Lyra Quell was flagged and her procurement rights suspended, and that Elias Rourke was marked for containment. "They are not chasing us," Elias said. "They are filing us." The pilot looked back, scared. "That is Axiom." Lyra's jaw set. "Hold." Another channel opened, cleaner and private. A calm voice spoke like a memo. "This is Director Cashinver of the Axiom Secretariat," the voice said. "Dr. Quell, your access is revoked. Elias Rourke, you are an anomaly under active review." Lyra leaned toward the screen. "You cannot do this without due process." "This is due process," Ver replied. "It is simply faster than you prefer." Elias kept his voice level. "You want the key." A pause followed, then honesty, because denial was not worth it. "You are carrying a routing instrument that does not belong in private hands. To maintain stability, we are initiating a corrective option, and Gravel Spear is being prepared," Ver added. Lyra needed the frame in plain terms and kept it short. Gravel Spear is a heavy drop weapon, and it hits like a steel beam falling from very high. "It matters because it can erase a target and call it an accident," Lyra continued. "It has to be stopped now, because once the lane locks, you cannot talk it back." Elias looked at the orchard key again and felt the shift in the problem. This was not just a thing to steal, it was a door. "If the hub recognizes this," he said, "then it can show us who signed the spear." Lyra nodded quick. "Yes, it can show the chain, and that is why Ver wants it quiet." Elias stared at the navigation display, and routes collapsed into one bright corridor, narrow and clean. A path that looked like rescue and felt like a funnel. The pilot pointed, voice shaking. "That lane is the only one left." Lyra watched the lane light up. Kestrel Hollow. Kestrel Hollow was a private corridor outside normal traffic noise, and it mattered because it was where people moved things nobody wanted recorded. They had to take it now because every other route was being shut like gates at an airport when the last flight was boarding. Elias looked at Lyra. "They're forcing us into a tunnel, and Lazarus will be waiting at the other end," Lyra said. Elias glanced at the dock worker on the deck, still breathing still alive. Lazarus had built the trap with a person because people force choices. "We are not handing you over," Elias said, not to Vare but to the lane itself. "We ride the tunnel, then we hit Spine Hub." Lyra kept her voice low. "Spine Hub is like the station's control room for freight. If we can reach it, the key can open what Vare is hiding. And if we cannot," Elias asked. "Then they turn us into a lesson," Lyra replied. Vare's voice returned polite as a memo. "Enter the corridor. Present yourself for transfer. Dr. Quell will be handled according to policy." Lyra's mouth tightened. "Policy is how you wash your hands." Elias closed his fist around the orchard key. "This is bigger than just running." Lyra nodded once hard. "Yes, that is the next layer." Elias leaned toward the pilot. "Take the corridor." The pilot stared. "That is what they want. Then we fight where they force us," Elias said. "We do not give them a clean capture." Lyra reached out and touched Elias's wrist. Brief pressure, a promise without romance. "You said you would get me out." "I meant it," Elias said. The tug surged into Kestrel Hollow, and Vespera Junction fell behind them like a door closing. The lane ahead stayed bright and narrow like a runway that only led one way. Somewhere in the dark Lazarus was already setting a price. Somewhere above Cash and Vare was already writing a signature that could drop a spear. They had been forced into Kestrel Hollow, and the goal was no longer just escape. Elias Rourke and Dr. Lyra Quell had to reach Spine Hub and break Cash and Vare's strike before the lane locked them into a clean capture. Spine Hub looked like an airport control tower built inside a shipping yard. It mattered because it decided who got a gate and who got stuck outside, and they had to get in now because once Vare sealed the hub under maintenance, nobody without his signature could touch anything. The tug docked at a private clamp that did not show on public boards. The moment it latched, the tug's systems went quiet like the station had been waiting for them to arrive. Lyra checked her kit and spoke low. "We go in with a quarantine check." Elias kept his breathing slow and the Halo Governor pulse cold under his collarbone. Lyra kept it simple. "A quarantine check is a pretend health inspection, like taping off a hallway in an emergency room," she said. "It matters because nobody wants contamination on their record. We use it now because it buys minutes when people would rather wave you through than argue," she added. Elias nodded once. "Minutes is all we need." They stepped into a service corridor that smelled like disinfectant laid over rust. Emergency lights painted the floor in thin strips like a runway that never promised a safe landing. A gate scanner waited ahead, and an Axiom guard stood beside it with a tablet and a tired face. Lyra lifted a case of sterile seals and a diagnostic board showing a fake contamination warning, and she walked like she belonged there. The guard raised his hand. "State purpose?" he asked. "Quarantine check," Lyra said. "Possible coolant line contamination." The guard leaned in, read the board, then pulled his head back like he did not want the problem near him. He waved them through. Elias followed, half a step behind, and the orchard key pressed flat against his ribs under his jacket felt heavy as a secret that wanted to speak. They passed another checkpoint and another camera, and each one felt like a mouth waiting to bite. Lyra touched his sleeve, once, quick. "Spine access is close." Elias stared at a corridor map and felt his gut tighten. The path they were being allowed to take was too smooth and too direct. "It is a trap," Elias said. Lyra did not deny it. "Yes." Elias looked at the camera domes and then at a sensor mast near corridor split, and he spoke in plain goals. "They're chasing your badge and my blood, and we need them chasing the wrong thing." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "You mean your trace?" Elias nodded. "I'll let it flare, they rush in, and you slip past and open the panel." Lyra's jaw tightened. "If you do that, you push too hard." "I will manage it," Elias said. "You watch my numbers, and if I stop answering, you pull me out." Lyra held his gaze for a beat, then nodded once. One flare, one window. Elias peeled back the dull patch at his collar and stepped toward the mast, close enough for it to taste him. The mast chirped, and a small light flipped from blue to amber. A comm station voice spoke overhead. "Compliance event detected. Stand by." Lyra did not stand by, and she opened her case under the cameras and laid sterile tape on the floor fast and neat. It looked like routine, and it was a lie wearing a uniform. Footsteps arrived tight and controlled. Inspector Seraphine Holt rounded the corner with 2 officers and a compact rig carrying a restraint net launcher, her face calm and her eyes locked on Elias's collar. Subject located, Holt said. Submit for relocation. Lyra stepped between Holt and Elias. This corridor is under quarantine procedure. Holt glanced at the tape and the warning board. Your access is revoked, Doctor. Lyra did not blink. If you breach a quarantine line, you own the incident. Do you want that in the audit queue? Holt hesitated for a fraction of a second. Not fear, risk math. That half second was the window. Lyra moved sideways, slipping past Holt's angle like a nurse ducking around a gurney. Elias shifted his weight, putting his shoulder between Holt and Lyra without making it look like a fight. Holt saw it, and her voice cooled. Do not protect him. Elias kept his tone flat. I'm not asking you to like me. I'm asking you to back up. Holt lifted her hand, and the rig drifted forward. Heat rose behind Elias's eyes, and the Halo Governor pulsed cold hard enough to sting his teeth. Lyra reached a door marked spine access and pressed her diagnostic board to the reader. The lock hesitated, then clicked. Holt snapped her gaze to the sound. Stop her. Elias moved first because the goal was clear. Keep Holt here and keep Lyra inside. He stepped into the rig's path and shoved it sideways into the wall, bumping it hard enough to scrape the launcher out of alignment for 1 beat. Elias did not run, and he made the fight close. 1 officer lunged with restraint cuffs aimed for Elias's arms, and Elias caught the wrist, turned it down, and forced the officer to the floor without striking his face. The second officer swung a cuff toward Elias's neck. Elias shifted, pinned the arm, and used the wall to trap it. Holt's voice cut quiet and sharp. Not your neck. Your neck is the product. Elias stared at her. At least you say it out loud. Holt stepped closer, and Elias saw something sharp under her calm. She did not hate him. She hated disorder. Director Vare does not tolerate unknowns, Holt said. Elias kept his breathing steady, forcing his pulse down so the cold pulses would not stack. Then tell him he is about to learn one. Down the hall, a door hissed shut. Lyra was inside Spine Hub. Spine access felt like the back hallway of a stadium, narrow and humming, lined with panels and camera eyes. Lyra's goal was simple. Find a chain that pointed gravel spear at a target and break it before Vare pressed the last signature. She moved fast but controlled, like she was late to a shift, not breaking into a lock. A side panel sat behind a maintenance seal, smooth and reflective, and it did not look special, which was the point. Lyra pulled the orchard key from Elias's jacket where it had been taped flat. It was small and plain like a key card for a storage locker, and she pressed it to a hidden slot. The panel chimed softly, and a screen bloomed with lane maps, timing tables, and a stack of signed approvals. Outside the access door, Elias could hear the corridor tightening, boots, hard breaths, and the rig scraping for position. Holt was calling for more units, and more units were coming. Elias had his own goal: keep the corridor blocked without turning it into a slaughter. He moved quick and clean without wasting motion. He caught the edge of a restraint net, rolled his shoulder, and tore it, loose before it could snag his collar. A hand reached with a small sampler tool. Elias trapped the wrist against the wall and twisted until the tool clattered away. The Halo Governor pulsed cold again, and the cold hurt deep in his teeth because his heat was still climbing under it. Lyra's fingers flew across the screen, reading the chain like a doctor reading vitals. Her eyes stopped on a release confirmation line, and then on the names attached. A hollow window opened on the panel, crisp and calm. Cash and Vare filled the frame like a man on a clean video call, not a man about to drop a weapon. He looked like someone who could close a file and sleep afterward. Dr. Quell, Vare said, you are inconveniencing the station. Lyra did not look up. You are preparing a strike. Vare's expression did not change. I am maintaining stability. Lyra kept it in the simplest terms because her goal was not debate. Gravel spear is a heavy drop weapon, and it hits like a steel beam from a great height. You cannot call that stability, she said. Vare's eyes flicked to the panel where the key was active. That token does not belong to you. Lyra finally looked at the hollow, pale eyes steady. It belonged to someone who did not want you to own the lanes. Veer's voice stayed even. Elias Rourke is an anomaly. Anomalies create panic. Panic stops freight, and freight must flow. Lyra felt the clarity in it, and it landed like a weight instead of a revelation. This was not about a fugitive. It was about control of the room. You were using the hub like a choke point, Lyra said. Veer did not deny it, because he did not have to. His certainty was the blade. Behind Elias, a door at the far end of the corridor opened with soft precision. More Axiom officers arrived, moving like they had rehearsed this exact hallway. Holt stepped into view again, posture calm and eyes sharp. She did not rush, because she expected time to belong to her. Stand down, Holt said. Elias kept his hands up with palms visible, like a man trying not to look like a threat. He spoke to Lyra without turning his head. How long? Elias asked. Lyra did not answer with comfort. I see the chain. I need minutes. Heat climbed another notch, and the Halo governor dumped cold hard enough to make Elias's jaw ache. He forced his breathing slower, because he could not win by speed, only by timing. Holt raised the net launcher. We take you alive. That is the best offer you get. Elias kept his voice flat. I'm not here for offers. He tapped the Veilburn jammer once at low power. The corridor lights flickered, camera domes stuttered, and tablets blinked as feeds jumped. Elias moved in that blink and slammed his shoulder into the nearest officer, pinning the net launcher arm to the wall. He twisted until the mechanism jammed, and he did not strike faces, he broke angles. Lyra spoke fast with eyes on the screen. I have the signed approvals and the release timing. Elias swallowed. Do it. Lyra's fingers hovered for a beat, like she was standing at a line she could never uncross. Then she moved, and she said the reason out loud, to keep her hand steady. I am making this chain public, so the station cannot pretend it never happened, she said. Elias heard her and understood the move, because a secret that became a record was harder to erase cleanly. Lyra pulled the chain of approvals onto the screen, copied it into a packet, and chose a label that would force the system to carry it. Freight safety integrity. She kept the explanation short and plain. It is a priority tag, like pulling a fire alarm in a building. It has to go out now, because once Veer seals the hub, the network will choke, Lyra added. Lyra hit send, not to one channel but to all of them. Neutral Accord, Council Audit Queue, Cinderline Security Incident Logs, Terran Strategic Directorate Inbox, and Local Maintenance Record. The station tried to throttle it, and blackout rules squeezed bandwidth like a hand on a hose. Lyra used the Orchard key to stamp the packet as an emergency integrity notice, and the system obeyed because it cared about being blamed more than being loyal. An alert flashed that release confirmation was invalid. Another line followed that guidance handshake failed. Far out in cold space, Gravel Spear was not a villain. It was a tool waiting for a number and a signature. Without hub timing, it could not guarantee a controlled path, so it aborted. A disposal vector appeared on Lyra's screen, plain and final, and the spear rotated away from the lane and burned on minimal thrust into deep space. Expensive trash drifting in the dark. Veer's hollow stayed calm. You just bought chaos. Lyra's eyes stayed locked. I bought time. Holt's voice cut and sharp now. Seize them. Officers lunged. Elias moved to block, and his vision pulsed at the edges. Heat was climbing faster, and the Halo governor was running out of room to argue. Lyra slapped a physical seal across the panel, a crude tamper flag like taping shut a broken cabinet in an emergency room. It was not elegant, but it was effective. A siren rose, not Axiom, neutral. A new voice came over station speakers stamped with authority. All Axiom personnel stand down, the voice said. Spine Hub Integrity event is under council investigation. The officers froze for one beat, calculating risk. Holt looked at where Veer had been on the hollow, then at Elias, then at the corridor cameras coming back to life, and she understood what the record meant. Veer's hollow flickered, held steady for a second, then vanished without goodbye. Holt did not rage. She did something smarter. She stepped back, and Axiom withdrew because sometimes retreat was the cleanest kind of control. Neutral security flooded the corridor from both ends with boots loud and visors down. moving like firefighters entering a smoke-filled hallway. Elias let out one controlled breath and felt his legs threaten to fold. His ribs burned, and his hand shook. Lyra grabbed his forearm hard. "Move." "I am moving," Elias replied. Lyra kept him upright and guided him into a side maintenance alcove with a cold vent humming like an air conditioner in a cheap motel. She set him down against the wall and pressed 2 fingers to his neck. His pulse was too fast. Lyra did not sugar it. "You are crashing," she said. "Not yet," Elias whispered. Lyra reached in her kit and gave him a small dose meant to blunt the worst of a flare, and she did not pretend it was a miracle. "The serum gave you margin." "Now it is collecting," Lyra added. Outside the alcove, neutral voices echoed, and the station felt less like a trap and more like a courtroom. Elias looked at the orchard key in Lyra's hand. "We stopped the spear," he said. Lyra nodded once, exhausted. "And steady. We stopped it today." Elias closed his eyes for a beat, then opened them. "And there." Lyra did not soften the truth. "He will come back. He will come back smarter." Elias forced himself to stand slow and careful, and the Halo governor pulsed cold again like a rail he could lean on. Lyra stepped close, careful as if space between them was still a corridor full of sensors. She pressed her hand to his wrist light and steady, just long enough to anchor him. "You kept your promise so far." Elias met her eyes. "We are not done." They slipped out of the alcove and into the moving crowd of neutral uniforms. 2 fugitives hidden inside an investigation. They had turned a secret into a record, bought time, and not bought freedom. Neutral security flooded the corridor like firefighters, fast and loud, pushing people back with bright lights and hard voices. It should have felt safer, but it felt like a crowded airport after a false alarm. Lyra kept her hand on Elias's wrist for 1 steady second, then let go. "Keep your breathing slow." Elias nodded and forced the heat down with discipline, and the Halo governor under his collarbone pulsed cold then eased. They moved with the flow with heads down, not running and not stopping. Elias kept the orchard key pressed flat against his ribs under his jacket like a spare card that could open the wrong door. A neutral officer pointed down a side hall. "You too. This way," the officer said. Lyra did not argue, because arguing made you memorable. They turned into a service passage that smelled like coolant and old coffee, and the lights were dimmer with fewer cameras like the back hallway behind the stadium. Lyra exhaled once. We cut across and reached the private clamps. Elias heard a soft scrape behind them. Not a boot, more like a tool on metal. He stopped walking and listened, and the pattern came in 2 steps, a pause, then 2 steps again. Not neutral. Lyra saw it too, and her shoulders tightened. A figure stepped from a doorway ahead and blocked the hall with a lazy stance. Rafe Kincaid looked clean for a man who lived in dirt deals, and his eyes went straight to Lyra, then to Elias's collar. "You made the lane loud. Now, it is expensive to chase." "You," Rafe added. "Then do not chase," Elias said. Rafe smiled without humor. "I do not chase. I collect." 2 more bodies slid in behind them, quiet and patient. A small drone rose near the ceiling with its lens open like a hungry eye. Lyra whispered, "Do not let them read your neck." Elias did not move toward the drone. He moved toward Rafe because the goal was clear. Get Lyra out of the line first and keep the fight close. Rafe grabbed Lyra by the sleeve and yanked her back into him, clean and practiced like a cop taking control of a wrist. Heat surged behind Elias's eyes, and the Halo governor answered with a cold pulse that stung his teeth. Rafe leaned toward Lyra's ear. "Give me the key or give me his neck. Either way, you walk away alive," Rafe added. Lyra's eyes flicked to Elias, then to the drone. She did not plead. Elias kept his breathing slow, because he knew the real danger was not the cartel. If he tried to win with a burst, his body would turn on him. The serum had been pushed past safe, and his immune system was not a loyal soldier. It was a guard dog that bit the wrong person if you yanked the chain too hard. Elias spoke to Lyra, quiet and direct. "When I move, you drop." Lyra nodded once. Elias lifted his hands like he was surrendering, and he took 1 step forward to look tired and manageable. Rafe watched him with calm confidence. You are smarter now, Elias, Rafe said. Do not waste it. I'm not wasting it, Elias said. I'm using it. He tapped the Veilburn jammer once at low power, and the overhead light flickered while the drone stuttered midair for a blink. Lyra dropped hard to the floor. Elias lunged. He did not punch Rafe in the face. He drove his shoulder into Rafe's chest and pinned him against the wall, using the narrow hall like a vice. He trapped Rafe's sampler hand and twisted until the tool clattered away. One of Rafe's men grabbed for Elias's collar, and Elias caught the wrist, turned it down, and shoved the man into an open maintenance cabinet. Metal banged loud enough to echo, and that noise was the point. Neutral security moved toward noise, because noise meant liability. Rafe tried to yank Lyra up again, and Lyra rolled, grabbed his belt strap, and pulled him off balance the way a medic yanked a gurney corner to clear a doorway. It was not graceful, but it worked. Elias felt heat climb again, and the Halo governor pulsed cold harder this time. He forced his mind into a narrow tunnel, finished the move, and stopped. He slammed the cabinet door shut on the second man's arm, not breaking it, just trapping it long enough to steal time. Then he jammed the latch with a metal wedge from the floor. Rafe swore under his breath and reached toward Elias's neck with bare fingers, desperate now for ownership. Elias caught the hand and held it still. You're not taking my blood, Elias said. Rafe's eyes flicked to Lyra. Then I take her. Lyra rose from the floor, hair loose and eyes steady, and she did not run. She stepped sideways toward an open hatch marked service access. Elias made the only choice that kept him alive long term, and he did not sprint. He did not chase Rafe into a brawl that would burn him out. He grabbed a wall lever and yanked it down. A heavy door dropped behind Rafe with a grinding slam, a mechanical shutter meant for cargo safety, and it cut the hall in half. Rafe jumped back, barely clearing it. The drone fell confused and skittered across the floor. Lyra slipped through the service hatch. Elias followed, breathing slow, forcing the heat down 1 inch at a time. Behind the shutter, Rafe's voice hit the metal muffled and furious. You cannot hide forever. Elias did not answer, because he did not need to. Lyra was not in Rafe's hands. They crawled through a narrow service duct that smelled like dust and warm wiring. When they dropped into a storage alcove, neutral boots thundered past the hall they had left, chasing noise and paperwork. Lyra pressed her palm to Elias's chest for one brief second, checking his breath like an emergency habit. You stay controlled. I had to, Elias said. Lyra nodded once. Your body is collecting interest. A market ping flashed on a public board outside the grate, then vanished, and Elias caught one name in the blur. Moth Velan. Lyra saw it too. He is still watching. He is calculating cost, Elias replied. A public record, make say. Broker nervous. Somewhere, the hunt was still on. It just got more expensive. Elias and Lyra had a route, a key, and a problem that no longer fit inside Vesper Junction. Their next goal was clear: force Terran's strategic directorate to put Lyra under protection before Axiom turned her into a cautionary tale. They reached the private clamps by moving like tired workers, taking service stairs and avoiding main halls. Every few minutes Elias paused, not to rest, but to lower his heat before the Halo governor punished him with cold. In a dead corner beside an old relay panel, Elias pulled a thin cable from his sleeve and plugged into the port. The screen lit with a grainy feed like a cheap video call in a storm. Admiral Soren Havoc appeared, older and sharp with tired eyes. He did not waste time. Confirm, Havoc said. Are you alive? I am alive, Elias replied. Not clean. Havoc's gaze flicked to Lyra. Identify. Lyra held herself still. Dr. Lyra Quell, Gray Bay Clinic, Vespera Junction. You broke a neutral accord, Havoc said. I kept him breathing, Lyra replied. Elias cut in calm and direct. We broke Vere's chain. The packet is in the neutral accord council queue. Axiom will deny and delay, Havoc said. They will lose time, Elias replied. That is what we bought. Havoc leaned closer. What do you want from me, Roar? Elias did not dance around it. A protection order for her. Signed and logged. Not a favor that disappears later. Havoc exhaled, once slow like a man hearing the bill. Sheltering a foreign medic under Terran authority will be used against us. Elias held the screen with a flat stare. Without her, Orchard Key is in Lazarus' hands. Without her, the record never exists, Elias added. Without her, I am a sealed anomaly on an Axiom card. Havoc went silent for a beat. Then he spoke like a door unlocking. Protection order approved, Havoc said. Dr. Lyra Quell is under Terran Strategic Directorate shelter status. Any seizure attempt on Terran soil will be treated as an act against Earth, Havoc added. Lyra's shoulders sagged for half a second, then steadied, because relief was dangerous. Relief made people sloppy. Elias let out one control breath. Log it. It is logged, Havoc replied. Now move. Lyra swallowed. After this, I do not have my old life. Elias did not offer a fantasy. He offered a choice. Then we use the new one, he said. Havoc's eyes held on Elias. Your body is not a weapon you can push forever. I know, Elias said. The feed cut. Lyra rested her fingertips on Elias's wrist the way she did when she needed to anchor a patient or herself. You meant it. I always did, Elias replied. They unplugged and moved because the station would not wait for their emotions. New Cascadia intake looked like a busy airport built into orbit, bright lights, strict lanes, and security that did not pretend it was optional. The shuttle docked with a heavy thud Elias felt in his ribs, and he forced his breath to stay quiet. A Terran officer met them at the ramp with a tablet and a calm voice. Elias Rourke. Dr. Lyra Quell. Lyra did not relax, and she scanned corners and ceilings. Seems like she still expected a trap. Under whose authority? She asked. The officer kept it simple. Terran Strategic Directorate. Signed by Admiral Soren Havoc. Logged with civilian oversight. Lyra let out a breath she had been holding too long. It was not peace, but it was rules she could read. Elias was guided into a clinic bay that felt like an emergency room on a quiet night, clean and honest about limits. A doctor in simple scrubs checked the Halo governor and spoke like someone with no interest in drama. You will feel fine until you do not, the doctor said. Then it hits fast. Elias kept his voice flat. What is the rule? The doctor answered in plain terms. Salts, cooling cycles, and rest. It matters because your body is running hot even when you stand still, the doctor continued. Start now, because your immune system will push back if you ignore the schedule. Lyra stood in the doorway with hands clasped behind her back, watching like she could keep the future in place by being ready. Elias asked the question he did not want to ask. If I push again, what happens? He asked. It will not look heroic, the doctor said. It will look like organ stress and slow failure. Elias nodded once. Understood. The doctor adjusted the Halo governor settings and stepped out. Lyra took one step into the room, then stopped like she was still at the edge of a corridor. Full of sensors. I can work here, she asked. Limited, Elias said. They will watch you. Lyra's mouth tightened. I was watched before. Elias looked at her silver skin catching the clinic light and saw the truth beneath it. She was not a myth. She was a person who made a choice and paid for it with her old life. At least here the watchers have names, Elias said. Lyra moved closer and placed her hand on his wrist for one steady beat. Not romance, confirmation. They were still alive. Elias covered her hand lightly, careful not to squeeze. You saved me from their rules. Now I keep you from their silence, Elias added. Lyra held his eyes. We did not get a fairy ending. No, Elias replied. We got a real one. Outside the clinic window, ships moved like trucks on a night highway. Life did not pause for anyone. Somewhere out there, Cash and Ver still had pens to sign and lanes to squeeze. The record was public now, and that made him slower, not harmless. Lyra lifted her hand from Elias's wrist and stood straighter. What happens next? Elias breathed in slow and kept his heat down by choice. We heal enough to move. Then we make sure Ver cannot write people into cages again, Elias added. Elias lay still, listening to the quiet hum of Terran systems. Lyra stood by the door like someone who had traded her old life for one hard choice and refused to regret it. They try to turn us into paperwork, Elias said. And we refused, Lyra replied. Outside the window, ships moved like trucks on a night highway. Somewhere, Cashinver was already writing the next signature, but this time there was a record he could not erase. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. The fight for the lanes is not over. It is just getting smarter.